It's all in your head. You don't look sick. Your tests are normal. It's probably anxiety. There's nothing wrong with you. Have you heard these words from physicians, family, and friends? If you're someone who has been struggling and swirling through the revolving door of healthcare to find answers about your health, or if you know someone who is going through this experience, then this podcast is for you. Welcome to the Desperate for a Diagnosis podcast with Laura Nozicka. Hello, and welcome to the Desperate for a Diagnosis podcast. I am your host, Laura Nozicka, and I am so honored to have my guest with me today because there are so many, I speak from my heart. There are so many special people out there who have gone through journeys that some of us will never even understand. And my guest today has not only gone through her and still going through her own health journey, but is helping other people go along in their journeys as well. So I would like to introduce you to Falguni Desai. And she's going to talk to us today all about her journey with scleroderma and what it is, and a lot of mystery around it at this point in time, but she is this amazing advocate, and I am just thrilled to have all of you meet her today. So let me tell you a little bit about Falguni. She has a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration and a postgraduate degree in Management Studies. She brings over 25 years of experience in corporate America, where she held senior business operation roles and managed complex programs, and is a certified project management professional. Falguni was diagnosed with scleroderma in 2019 and almost lost her life. Since then, she has worked on her health, focusing on better understanding her disease and using her voice to share her story. Falguni is a passionate advocate for scleroderma awareness, working as a patient, advocate, and educator. And she also enjoys traveling. Wait till you hear all the traveling she has done. She enjoys traveling, attending the theater, and spending time with her family. Welcome, Falguni.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you for having me.
I'm so delighted to have this conversation with you. And from what I understand, the color for scleroderma advocacy is teal. So the best I could get is my little turquoise jacket here.
Beautiful.
I hope that qualifies.
Yes, it does.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, I'd like to just jump right into our conversation here and talk about where it all started. But why don't we start, Falguni, talking about explaining what scleroderma is?
Scleroderma is a rare autoimmune disorder. It mostly affects women, 1 in 10. And the most important, I would say, for my journey is that it's a disease that works and starts eating on your good cells. And it destroys your immune system. It makes your skin very hard. It's a collagen disease. And it can affect your full body, from your organs, your joints, your skin, and it's very painful. And depending on when it's diagnosed, the level of prognosis depends on when it's diagnosed. There is no cure for scleroderma, but there are treatments. So the earlier that a physician can diagnose you, the sooner you can start a more manageable treatment plan. But like I said, there is no cure. And so we need everyone to be able to talk about scleroderma and build awareness. And that comes from the patient and all emerging clinicians who need to be aware of this disease.
Mm-hmm. And to hear that it's a collagen-based disorder, autoimmune, but collagen-related, because I think we all hear out on social media and all of the health gurus always talking about take collagen to build muscle and for your hair and your skin and all of this, and then to hear that there's a condition where there's this overload or overproduction of collagen, it's kind of hard to wrap your brain around that, and to think that that's actually damaging when we're being encouraged from health professionals to use collagen.
Very true. We may look young, but our faces and mouths are tight and it affects all our joints. And so, earlier that we can get diagnosis, the better we can start physical therapy, this very special hand therapy that we can
Mm.
use, because if we don't, our fists, we're not able to do fists and our fingers will look like nodules. And it's very, very painful.
Talk with us about where it started for you in terms of your symptoms and how long it took for you to get a diagnosis.
So my symptoms started in June of 2019. We'd just come back from our trip to Hawaii,
Mm.
and it was quite busy at work as well. But I started noticing my fingers were turning like into sausages, and I was getting numbness in my fingers, and my joints started hurting. So I thought, okay, this doesn't seem right. So I made an appointment, and the initial response from my physician was, I think it's carpal tunnel. She didn't say think, it's carpal tunnel. Let's get you into therapy. So I did 6 weeks of hand therapy, but I noticed that it wasn't getting better and my hands were getting thicker and thicker. And I was getting more joint pain in my knees and in my wrists and in my shoulders. And it was getting harder and harder for me to even hold a steering wheel, just driving to work and even pulling open the corporate doors in the office, and bending down to, plug in my laptop. It was just getting harder and harder. So over time, I was prescribed different medications, which I got reactions that really didn't work for me because they sort of went from carpal tunnel to arthritis. And I was still getting more tired as well. And my journey took me when was given a biologic in January of 2019. And that ultimately sort of, I think, inflamed the speed of the scleroderma condition. And it was extremely painful because I was on a business trip. I had to fly back. They normally say for an autoimmune condition, everybody's tested for an ANA. Now, just because you're ANA, it doesn't tell you the type of autoimmune condition you have. And depending on,
And
because, yeah,
Falguni, let me ask you, what is it an ANA
it's an
test? Tell us about that.
autoimmune, basically, an ANA blood work is to see whether you have an autoimmune condition or not.
Okay.
But from there, because there are so many different autoimmune conditions, my physician never went that one step because he didn't know, right, from the
Mm.
symptoms that were happening. He then said he did an autoimmune scleroderma antibody test. And that's when it was diagnosed in March of 2019 that I had scleroderma. So it was a
Mm.
9-month journey for me, and that's good. For many people, I've heard from my other scleroderma warriors that it can take anywhere from 10 to 15 years. And
Oh.
you're living with that terrible, terrible condition because a lot of physicians, A, haven't seen what a scleroderma patient looks like. And unfortunately, this phrase that you hear, it's in your head. You need to
Mm.
rest.
Mhm.
It's stress, right? You just take some time off, or do something that is going to bring you joy and give you an opportunity just to relax. Well, unfortunately, scleroderma is an autoimmune condition. It affects your immunity. It affects inflammation and creates inflammation in your body. It also is a fibrotic disease, really pulling at your lungs. And, if you don't catch it, the severity of your lungs, the prognosis is not good. It can affect your heart. For me, it affected my kidneys. And the scarring of all, what scleroderma patients look like. the skin
Mm,
thickening, thinking, oh, collagen, that's great. Well,
right.
in a negative way, it's not good because it can affect your blood vessels as well. And so it's also a vascular disease and it affects your small and medium blood vessels and it constricts blood flow. So a lot of our scleroderma patients have secondary and tertiary diseases besides scleroderma. So I
Mm,
have polymyositis, which is the inflammation and the weakening of my muscles, and Raynaud's. So a lot of people have heard of Raynaud's because it's the constriction and blood flow that doesn't get to your fingertips and your toes. And you can get ulcers, you can get amputation. So it's very critical to be able to manage the symptoms that we get.
mm.
So mine
And
was a
Phil,
9-month journey.
9 months, which, like you said, for you is pretty short
Yeah,
compared
yeah,
to other people who have it. And from what I understand, it's roughly what, 80% of
yep,
women
yep,
who
yep,
have it?
yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there any theory, I guess, out there as to why it affects women more frequently?
So I've been doing my research, and as an advocate, it's very important to understand any condition that we may have, to see how we can better partner with our physicians and have come up with questions so that we can understand together what's the best level of treatment. But there is a genetic component to it.
Oh,
Stress is another component, and it's the protein makeup because we're all individuals and the protein makeup of our bodies and our cells. And those are components. It's also environmental. So it's a whole host of factors, right? And we all have to, that's why it's mind, body, and soul. Even when you're healthy, really look at where you are, what you're doing, and really taking care of yourself, both from a mindset perspective as well as physically and your environment.
and what type of physician did you start off with in terms of your diagnostics or diagnostic journey, and where did you go to from there, and what type of physician gave you the definitive diagnosis?
So it was my initial rheumatologist. So I went to a rheumatologist. So initially it was my PCP, which is like your first primary care physician.
Mm.
And they said, oh, you need to see a rheumatologist, only because she thought it was arthritis at that point.
Oh.
So he hadn't seen a scleroderma patient, but he had seen people with Raynaud's. And so after he did the blood work for the scleroderma autoantibody, he did say, you have scleroderma. And I still remember this because it was March 5th, 2019. And he had said, please bring your family with you. And he said, Falguni, you have scleroderma, but it's going to go
Mm.
away in 2 years. And that is still imprinted in my brain, right? Now, you could interpret it in many ways. It could be, well, the disease will sort of die down in 2 years, or I'm going to wake up in 2 years and I'm going to be back to normal, right? But it's still implanted. So
Mm.
if there's anything I would take away is a physician needs to be able to communicate with a patient so that because that patient at that time is very, very vulnerable when they're listening to something and they're going to latch on to that, right? And so for me, that 2 year window. But even then, I didn't get, I would say, the information that I needed. And I ended up going in renal crisis December of 2019. And that's when I was transferred over to a new rheumatologist and then a nephrologist for my kidneys, a pulmonologist for my
Mm.
lungs, because by then I had fluid in my lungs, a GI specialist, gastroenterologist for my digestive system. And then I have PT specialists for the body, for the hand. I have an eye specialist because I have inflammation in the eyes. So I have a whole team now. But initially, it started off with one physician and then me almost dying to get that care team, right? And it truly is a collaborative way that physicians need to work together. And unfortunately, because of the rarity of the condition, it isn't really truly understood, right?
Mm.
Until it's a dire straight situation. But anything I would say if someone's listening to this is it takes a collaborative team to care for a scleroderma patient, because it's not just one thing. The rheumatologist will initially sort of give you that diagnosis, but because it affects any part of your body, you need then the specialist to work with you, for that. So for
Yeah.
me, I was on dialysis because my kidneys almost shut down totally, but I was able to come off dialysis after 5 months. I'm thankful for my family and for the care team that I have, and for the insurance to enable me to get what I needed.
And the fact that a physician would actually attempt to quantify when your disease may go into remission or cure, whatever you want to call it, is really quite stunning, because usually doctors don't like to make any types of promises, especially a promise of hope. They may cite some statistics that they read that, well, you might go into remission and maybe for this long, or maybe not at all, or, sadly, they might toss out some life expectancy numbers. But I think it's really interesting that that physician felt so inclined to actually give you a number. And sure, any number or statement of hope, I guess you would say, of course, would stick with you.
That's why, and I think that's why I don't think he really understood the disease. And I hope that as he's, it's coming on to now 8 years for me since I moved and went through my journey. So I hope he's not giving that same level of information. So me as a patient advocate is really, working to see that even new physicians are working to better communicate with patients, right? And really think about what they're saying. And you're right, none of my other physicians have ever given me, even though I'm asking, where am I on this journey? And the journey
Yep.
is the treatment helping you? Yes, continue to do what you're doing.
Because I think we all, anyone who has a chronic condition, who's been diagnosed with one, anyone would love to get the end date, not the life end
Yep,
date, but
because you can mark it on your calendar and say, yeah,
exactly,
this
but
is,
not the end of your life, of course, but
yeah,
the end date of how long am I going to have
yeah.
to endure this? When does it end? I mean, we don't even like having a cold for a long period of time, let alone thinking about how long do I have to manage this chronic condition, or maybe it's not chronic, maybe it's acute, and maybe it will clear up at some point. But we'd love to, like you said, put that on the calendar. But it sounds like that physician, like you said, wasn't aware, or it was a communication issue. And for instance, on my show, so much of this, so many of the stories that the folks on my show, my guests, they come on the show and they talk about doctors having somewhat using dismissive language, and like you heard, it's all in your head, it's stress, it's anxiety, go lay down. And women, unfortunately, are on the receiving end of that so much more frequently, I believe, than men are typically. But this is almost the opposite kind of language that this physician was using, giving you hope versus dismissing that you even had anything.
But that even made me stronger, because having said that and knowing what I know now and the care team that I have and talking to other scleroderma patients as well, is that you have to be your own. And the physician, it's, I will truly say, because it's so rare. And also, Laura, you and I could be given the same diagnosis, but because our inner body and genetics and the protein cells, we're also different, it is hard to cure. And I do hope, I had the fortunate opportunity of sharing and being a patient with my rheumatologist and her medical students, and they get to see scleroderma patients. You may read about it, but seeing a scleroderma patient and touching the skin of a scleroderma patient is so very important. And the more we can build these collaborative opportunities for scleroderma patients can work with their rheumatologists or with their medical schools and have an opportunity to share is, I think, another way of building awareness and educating. But all I will say, as where I am today, is that the medication is one component, but it's
Mm.
also doing all the things around self-care, from the food that you eat, taking the rest, because with any autoimmune condition, especially with scleroderma, fatigue is paramount. And so, really slowing down, but keep moving to what you can, because you can't just rely on a medication. Do things that you enjoy. I was part of our local choir, and I'm starting to learn the recorder, right? And doing a little bit of sketching whenever I can, right?
Oh,
Based on what I can
how
hold
fun.
my
Yeah,
pen.
how
So
fun.
just doing things, because just taking the medication and sitting on the couch isn't going to help you. It's what you
Mhm.
eat, how you interact. Um, and joy to me is spending time with my family, traveling, but speaking about scleroderma. I'm very, very passionate about it. And, my goal is however way I can use my voice, because, we need a cure, and the more awareness and education we can bring. And we're definitely making very immediate strides, right? In terms of ultimately getting there, but we're not there yet.
Mm. What are you aware of, Falguni, in terms of stronger or better treatments or cure? Because right now, if I understand, a lot of what is available is really just symptom management. Is that
Yes,
correct?
now there is CAR T therapy, which is
Mm.
in the early stages, and it's through, uh, happens through, if you join a trial, or if your hospital is associated and doing these trials. And it's basically taking, your own bone marrow and really just cleaning out all the bad cells. And because it's the T cells that are a way of removing all those bad cells that you have in your body. It is
Mm.
painful, and it's still only in trial mode.
Okay.
But I know of people who it's helped. Um, so that's one way, right? And they've got medications to not, where the disease doesn't accelerate, like for the lungs as well.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So they're making strides. And the one good thing is that it's an international cohort. So there's work happening in the UK, in Spain. The US is a prominent leader as well, and I know South Korea is also doing a lot of in-depth
Oh,
work as well on autoimmune
wow.
conditions. So
Oh, goodness. Yeah.
there is that North Star. So,
Yeah.
we just have to keep strong and make sure that we partner really well with our physicians and specialists and work with them, right? Because if
Mm.
we don't treat the symptom, then that's when, unfortunately, things go bad.
Yeah. And it seems like, again, because it's rare, and some physicians, there's those conditions that some doctors will never see in a lifetime of practicing. And it sounds like scleroderma is one of those. And the presentation you and I talked about before, the presentation of scleroderma, or how it shows up, is really variable. So we said a lot like lupus. Lupus sometimes has kidney involvement.
Yep.
Sometimes it's, different organs that it's affecting, or it's more generalized. How is that true or not for scleroderma?
It is. And I think the CAR T therapy initially has been used for lupus patients. And
Okay.
there have been a couple that they're now trying on scleroderma because there's such an overlap. Um, but the autoimmune antibodies are different. And that's how they can differentiate between those autoantibodies, which I'm not educated on lupus, but I know mine for scleroderma. And if you think about it, Laura, it's those cells, those B cells and T cells in your body, and and that's that genetic makeup, right?
Mm.
Which differentiates us. But I truly do believe that it affects women more because of the biological makeup as well, right? So, from menstrual cycle, having a baby, menopause, because the average age is like 50 plus. I was 52.
Yep, you
Um,
don't have to tell me,
yeah,
sister, I know.
but scleroderma, there have been even juveniles as well,
Mm.
5-year-old, 11-year-old. So it's a very
Wow.
complex disease. So I cannot say
Yeah.
this triggers it. It's a host of components. And I
Mhm.
hope through all our fabulous researchers that they're really heads down trying to understand. Um, and because it's rare, it's hard to get that cohort together as well.
Sure.
And
Yep.
also, I think race plays a factor as well.
Hmm.
And,
How
predominantly
so?
affects women because, okay, I'm Indian Asian, right? But I've only come across one other person, especially here in the United States, who has scleroderma, right? And so it's understanding that biological makeup as well. Um, yeah, it's hard. It's a hard disease to live with and to talk about. But I think,
Yeah.
there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And the only way that we're going to get there, we have to get there together, right? Working in partnership with the pharmaceutical companies, physicians, any research that they're doing, getting involved, talking about it, and, living our lives to the best we can.
Yeah. In scleroderma, and so there's a lot of conditions out there where someone is not feeling well on the inside, but on the outside they look pretty okay. In fact, there's a book called You Don't Look Sick, and I
Yeah.
have that book.
Yeah.
Is that true for scleroderma patients in some way, to where maybe with family or friends there's this gross misunderstanding of what's going on with you as to maybe why you couldn't participate in something, and why are you always tired? You look fine, you don't look sick. Does that
Yes.
happen in the
Yes.
scleroderma community
Yes, it
too?
does. It's like a silent disease as well, the invisible
Mhm.
disease, I would say. The only
Yep.
features may be the tightening because of the collagen buildup in our face, but that's not for everyone because there's the diffuse scleroderma, which affects predominantly the whole body and your organs. There's limited scleroderma, which may not impact the full skin, and it may just affect some parts of your arm or your hands. So I would say it's the invisible disease, but it's a painful disease. If you see what I mean, right? People may not see that, but you're tired. Um, it's hard for you to sometimes mix in with groups, and especially being an autoimmune condition and affects your immunity, you do have to be careful.
Mhm. Yeah. What I'm curious about is thinking about some of your fellow scleroderma community, people in
Mhm.
your community, and those that it took longer to get diagnosed. If you have any stories or some background on those folks in terms of, it seems like you had a pretty somewhat clear-ish path, let's say. But what does it look like for other people trying to get a diagnosis in terms of maybe the types of providers or professionals that they went to, what treatments they tried? Walk us through kind of this potpourri of angst that people had to go through to find the answers. And I can only imagine what that does to someone psychologically. But tell us a little bit about maybe some of the stories, the diagnostic journeys to getting a,
Sure, sure.
a diagnosis.
Yeah. So one friend of mine, my part of my community. She was working and she was getting the same similar symptoms, fatigue, especially in her hands. She was getting the sort of the skeletal contractions in her
Mm.
hands. And her physician, and again, it was more in I would say, she was in Central Valley of California. And that particular physician, hadn't seen a condition like that. So it was more, okay, it's arthritis, similar to, carpal tunnel, let's take care of that. And she was insistent that this just isn't helping her, but she didn't understand how to navigate. And so I happened to meet her at an event, and I said, have you tried A, B, and C? Right. And, she said it's really hard to get, like I said, physiotherapy for the hand therapy initially. And they did not put her on any medication at that point in time. And so I said, well, see if you can see somebody else, right? Because it's not easy changing, a physician. And she was able to get a second referral, and that person then sort of sat down with her and helped her through her journey of helping
That
her.
was a rheumatologist?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And the fact that, again, just the symptomatology is, it could be anything. So as the doctors refer to their differential diagnosis list, so basically all the possibilities that it could be. I think in some ways, sometimes patients feel like, and what I've heard from the guests on my show, that they feel dismissed in so many ways, but so much of that has to do with the process of ruling things out versus ruling them
agreed.
in.
And I
And
will
things that,
say, for her, they were general medicine, so they hadn't seen a scleroderma patient, right? So I said this would be your opportunity to educate them, so that if they see somebody else with similar symptoms, they're not going to brush it off, right? It's really having that engagement. And I think that's the stories that I've heard. Some have been really, really good, and they will work with you, but they still don't know sort of what path to take. There was one friend of mine, and luckily that rheumatologist said, well, I'm not really sure, but I think you should see X. And she went to see that other person, and he immediately said, yes, you have scleroderma, and this is what we're going to do, right? So that's why that awareness is very important, and just educating and talking about it, because the more we can do that. And I'm not downsiding from the physician standpoint, but I'm also saying take the time. And if you're not sure, please don't say it'll go away in 2 years, but how about we get a second opinion? Or maybe I should have
when,
thought about that, right? But in that moment, you don't, right? So
right, you're getting hit with so much
yeah.
information and no answers at the same time. So if someone is in that situation where they're continuing to try to get answers, or the doctor continues to send a patient for test upon test and still not getting answers in terms of what it is, a lot of what it isn't, what would you advise someone in terms of when it's time to look for a second opinion, or time to leave a physician and do more research on, maybe someone who's a subspecialist in rheumatology, or even to understand, well, why would I go to a rheumatologist? Because not everybody, again, like those of us in the healthcare space, where we understand what all these ologists do,
Yeah.
and not everybody has a flavor for that or understanding. So how would you advise someone to think about moving on to a different physician, and even to decipher what specialty makes sense?
So I will talk, say, just from a scleroderma point of view. If you're not being listened to, then that is the time. Now, I know it's easier said than done, because not every community you're going to have that option. But if you can, take somebody with you as well, right? Take a friend, take a family member. Try and understand, are they getting the same vibes as well? Thinking, I don't think that physician really knows and you're not being rude or disrespectful, and just say that, I'd like to get a second opinion, please, just to better understand myself. Can you recommend someone? If they recommend someone, that's even better. If not, then it means going back to the drawing board based. And unfortunately for us, we have to say, all right, what's our insurance? What's covered? What's in network, right? But if you're not being heard, then I think that's that time, because then that even your collaboration partnership doesn't feel comfortable. If you're not being heard, then you're sort of just going and just following normal routine when really you need an answer.
Mhm.
And just so I personally, my learning now is if I don't feel comfortable or I'm not being heard, then I will ask if they can give me either another referral or a second opinion, or I will seek out somebody else that I can talk to. But
Mhm.
I will say
And
for Scleroderma, we have some very good foundations that can provide you with guidance and with help, right? With the Scleroderma
mm,
Research Foundation, with the Stefan's Scleroderma Foundation. So there are opportunities, and the National Scleroderma Foundation, where you can go there, and seek out information as well. Once you know you have scleroderma, but
mhm.
it's getting
Sure,
to that
sure.
route, right? And so,
Exactly.
yeah,
That's the
yeah.
hard part. And for you, I think we talked about it as well in terms of you went through this 9 months of trying to figure out what it was. And so once you did have a diagnosis, what what was going on in your mind at that point? What were you feeling
I was
in that?
angry. I was
Uh-huh.
angry. I was in pain. I almost lost my life. We were
Mm.
just going into COVID, remember? Because I remember when I was in
I'd
the
like to forget,
ICU,
honestly.
2000, going in 2020, early 2020.
Mm,
Um, and I'll just share this. So I know that when I was in the ICU and then I was in the ward, because COVID cases were just coming, because there were rooms next door to me that had like danger. Because my brother-in-law would make sure I walk slowly, even if I use one of those trolleys, right? Just a
mhm.
walker, just so that I could start. I don't get blood clots or anything. And there were people going in with hazmasks. Now I thought, oh, it's probably the flu. Ignorance, didn't know then until, you don't know what you don't know, right?
Right, right,
So
right. I
that
think
was
we all thought
bubbling.
it was just the flu
Yeah.
or whatever
So
at that
that was
point. Yeah.
bubbling in the background. But for
Mm,
me, it was, once I got home, I had to learn to walk again, occupational therapy, dialysis 3 times a week, getting up at 4. I was on 18 different medications. My husband was in charge of all the insurance and listing all the medications. My daughter was there. Fortunate for me, I have 3 sisters. They flew in. My niece and nephews came in. And so it was a journey of a new me, really. I was still thinking, oh, I'm going to be able to go back to work. But no, I
mm,
could not because I couldn't even talk. It was just the first 2 years were very, very, very hard for me, but I had a really good team, and I wasn't using my voice. Luckily, my daughter spoke up for me until I had the strength and the knowledge and the strength to start better understanding. And that's when I started getting involved with foundations. I will say, with any chronic condition, your mental state is very important. So I did go into therapy for
mm,
about 6 months because I had to, it was like a grieving process because it's a new you when you go through any illness, right? And you're trying to understand why this happened to you. All right, now what do I do? And you need to get that anger out and just clean yourself, right? For me, it was hard very initially because, all right, I didn't have my career, right? I didn't know if I was going to live. I'm a very strong, independent person, and I couldn't do things. I had a port near my heart, and so taking a shower, hygiene, just everything. So it was really hard, but I came through. And I would say that's my stubbornness, my resilience, and scleroderma is not going to bring me down. I want to,
Mm.
I want to be there for my daughter. I'm not going anywhere, and my family, and still see life, right? So it was hard, but look at me now. And all I would say is it's hard. It really is hard when you get a diagnosis. But once you get that care team, you are in a good position. You have to look after yourself. Do the things, do your exercises, eat your right foods, get involved in groups, right?
Mm.
Friends, people. I love traveling, so I travel,
I
anything that I can
know.
do.
You told me about some of your trips. What trip so far has been your favorite, and what's the one on the list that you're excited about?
My last year I got to go to Paris with my daughter, and then went to London because my niece graduated from medical school. So
Oh.
taking the Eurostar, and I have to pace myself, but the weather was beautiful. I was in a lovely place. And I'm hoping to go to Italy this year, right?
Mm.
Making sure I stay strong and stick to my regimen. I am very regimental, and I think that has helped me to be where I am today in terms of self-care. And I know not everybody can do that, but making sure you do all your exercises, have fun, you have a good diet, and just stay strong, healthy, laugh when you can. And if you're tired, please sit on the couch
Yeah.
or go to sleep, right? You have to listen to your body.
And with your care team, uh, there's a lot of, again, those ologists that
Yep.
are on your team.
Yeah.
How are they being managed? In healthcare, we talk a lot about who's the quarterback of your care. Is there one of your physicians that's kind of the central optimizer, if you will, of how those specialists are being used in your care, how they're communicating with each other? Do you have that kind of
So the
support?
rheumatologist, my rheumatologist is, I would say, the captain, but I am the second purser,
Mm.
right? Because they obviously will go through all the different tests, right? So with a scleroderma patient, you've got pulmonology where you have to do all your pulmonary function tests, making sure that's happening, getting the echograms for your heart. For me, it's also my nephrologist who was critical for me to get off dialysis. And so the specialists are important. I'm the second stewardship because I also keep a notebook and make sure that, luckily I'm in one network, because not all patients would have all specialists in one network, and they may be under different networks as well. So making sure
Mm.
you build that Venn diagram. So it really is the rheumatologist who's at the center of it. They will watch over, but you as an advocate have to make sure that you're asking the right questions as well, and making sure that, if you've got an issue with your breathing, that you're letting your pulmonologist know and seeing what they're recommending as well, and then conferring that back with your rheumatologist as well.
Mm-hmm.
And with a scleroderma patient, we have a lot of blood work that has to go on as well, and taking a lot of medications and all the different interactions that can happen as well. So it is a rheumatologist, but I would say you as the patient are the second purser and making sure everything happens.
Mm. You mentioned asking the right questions. What are some of the right questions that you would recommend patients ask?
So first, understand if you're being prescribed something, why are you being prescribed that? What are going to be the side effects? And letting them
Mm.
know and understand the different medications that you're also taking as well. Because in my situation, there are a lot of ifs and buts, but then you have to think about this and you have to think about that. So you really have to be able to not be afraid and just understand, all right, what are the alternatives? What if I don't do this? Because they always err on the side of caution, but you have to understand, if you have to have, why do I particularly have to have this test again? What are you looking for? What are the trend lines that you're seeing? And the only way you're going to be able to do that is understanding sort of what your condition is, building that rapport with the physician as well, because they may know it from a book perspective, but you live it every day, right? And don't forget, every patient is uniquely different. And so just because you have X doesn't mean you just want to prescribe B. What are the other alternatives? How is it going to interact with the different medications that I also am taking? So that's what I'm saying. You are sort of your own steward as well going in. And I know not everybody can do that, Laura, right?
Right. You have a lot of support and family and your daughter to help with managing some of those things. But
Yeah.
what has been helpful in terms of managing all the appointments, the medications, kind of logging how you feel every day, maybe what you ate? What are some of those things? One, what's a good way to track all of those things and document those things? And then once you have all of that, how do you use that for doctor's appointments?
So I have one big black book, which initially my daughter used to own until I got the strength, energy, where I really am owning that. So it's a book, and it goes back to 2019 of all my appointments. And that's where I put down the date, who I'm seeing, and I go in with my questions, and I'm seeing my progression of what I've been asking, how I've been feeling. But I have a large calendar as well. And because I need transportation, I have to coordinate and let my husband and my daughter know when my appointments are coming up as well. So it's a diary, and that diary, I have always a 2 to 3 year planner, because a lot of our appointments span out. And so I have that, I have my black book. And for me, diligently, I also use my phone in the notes section, because I take my blood pressure every day as well. And I track that, how I'm feeling. If there's anything that's off, I'm going to note it, I'm going to monitor it. And if I don't feel comfortable, then I reach out to my physician to ask them. And it's okay to do that.
Yeah. And talking about asking questions to your physicians, et cetera, or looking for a second opinion, or potentially just leaving your doctor altogether. I think so many people are sometimes very apprehensive of doing that, because there's this kind of this loyalty factor to a physician. Sometimes there's this idea of, oh, you don't question your doctor. Maybe that's changing a little bit as the generations are coming up here, but some people don't want to question their physicians, and or are nervous to walk away from them. Like you said, it's hard to reestablish yourself sometimes with a new physician, and then you have to tell the story all over again. But how would you kind of get someone feeling more comfortable with walking away from a physician if they needed to?
Most importantly, if you don't have that rapport, that's why I'm saying the rapport is very important to establish the partnership, because it is a partnership. And if you don't feel heard, then I would even just let them know that, I'd like to get a second opinion, because I don't feel myself that I'm getting the information that I'm not comprehending it, right? Is there something, or is there another way that you can help me in this way, or talk to me? Because sometimes it might be a communication component as well. And they may feel, well, I don't know if I could do that, right? So if you don't have the communication between the physician and the patient, that's when it's time to. And I've been very lucky that I'm going to say, well, what do you think I might want to get a second opinion? And then they would say, yeah, absolutely. How about seeing X? And that you truly know that you've got a partnership there.
Yeah, for
right?
sure. Because I think we
Because no
forget too
one is
sometimes.
going to say, I would say it's really rude, sorry, but if they're going to say, no, you can't have a second opinion.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
not everybody knows everything, right?
Absolutely. 100%.
Lucky I'm in a central place.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't, and that's why your cohort's important as well, because you can share with your different community members
Mm-hmm.
things that that's why getting into a support group, please, looking at the foundation, seeing what they have available in your area, trying to get a little network together and just bouncing off ideas. I've done that
Yeah.
many a time. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts here? Or
Because
somebody will ask me, hey, Falguni, what about this?
because I'm in Chicago and you're in California,
Yeah,
and so we're blessed with having access
yeah,
to very high level care.
yeah.
But there's people who live out in, the boondocks
Yes,
in
yeah.
a rural area, and they don't have access to these types of specialists.
So that's why resources, maybe something that I can help them with, I'm always happy to talk to scleroderma patients, but things that you're doing as well through the podcast, allowing people to sort of, make sure they've got a companion with them, be your own advocate. Obviously, we're not rude or being dismissive, but you want to build that dialogue with your physician because they're in the long haul with you for that journey. And
Mm.
scleroderma, isn't going to go away tomorrow. So
Not in
we're
two
on this
years.
road together, right? And
It's not going
that's
away in
why,
two,
yeah, and
right? It's
understand the
not going away in
disease.
2 years.
No, educate yourself as well, right? Go to
Hmm.
reputable sources, talk to other scleroderma patients. There are resources that you can sign up for, like the Scleroderma News, that's a reputable bio, sort of group. So there are resources out there, but the biggest thing you could do is say, you're not alone, right? Even though I haven't seen that many, but look, I did tell you, Laura, that when I was in Paris, I did meet another Scleroderma warrior, and
I
she had come
know,
up to
I know.
me, and so we
Oh,
spoke for like half an hour, right? So that community is strong no matter where, right?
yeah.
And the
And I
more,
love and I love that you refer to each other as warriors.
yes, we are.
Mhm.
We've got our shield and
Mhm.
our sword, right?
You do, you do. I always say when I'm in a tough situation that I'm wearing my Wonder Woman cuffs,
Yeah.
those bracelets,
Yeah.
where it just bounces off of me, or at least
We
that's the
just go
goal
round and
anyway.
round and then we get our suit on, right? So,
Exactly, exactly. I wish, in fact, my mom for Christmas, so here it is, February, and I still have a little Christmas tree here in my office because I like to light it up in the crummy
yeah,
winters here in
yeah.
Chicago, and it just makes me happy. But she gave me an ornament it was from Hallmark this
Yeah.
last year, and it's Wonder Woman, and you pull the bottom of it, and she spins. And when I
Oh,
was a
that's what
little
I
girl, I
grew
used
up
to
watching
spin and
Wonder
spin
Woman.
and spin since I would make myself sick because I wanted to be her. But I think all of us are Wonder
Yeah,
Woman women
absolutely. Yep.
in so many ways. And Falguni, I want to just talk a little bit about having scleroderma when you have not just a career, but you had a career.
Yeah.
And other women, they're either working outside of the home or in the home, whatever it might be. But talk about the shift in your world when you had this very high powered type A job and traveling and having a lot of responsibility in your work, and then you get hit with this diagnosis. And what was that like for you? And then how do you talk with women about handling work and having a chronic illness? How do you manage through all of that?
So for me, you know, communication, organization, executing, those are the skills that I'm using today when I live with
Mm.
scleroderma, in terms of organization, both with the medical field and all my appointments, but also using my voice in the advocacy that I do. So for me, I'm fortunate the skills that I learned growing up and at work, I've applied them to how I live it today. But
Mm-hmm.
I would say if somebody with a chronic condition is also able and is still working, then please, please, please make sure that you have your network, you really have a good sponsor that is going to be able to speak for you when you're not in the room, because women need that. But most importantly, listen to your body, right? Because we all want to, get to that next level. And if we don't help our fellow women, that's not how you want to get to the top, right? You want to be able to take people with you. And while I was in the workforce, doing a lot of mentoring, we did women's leadership opportunities and just really promoting and helping, because at the end of the day, you're not successful alone, and you want to be there so that you can see other people thrive and move forward. But listen to your body. I think that's one thing. I know I did, because I said that something doesn't seem right when I started having all these symptoms. But in hindsight, maybe there was more that I could have done, right? So if we start early in your journey, get information, get a team, and be open, just authentic as well, right? Don't try and hide stuff.
What do you say to women who maybe don't have the level of support maybe that you had, or maybe don't have a spouse and someone who's working and bringing in a paycheck, etc.? What do you say to women who don't have that support system?
Find your little cohort, right? If that's why support groups, and it doesn't have to be another person who has scleroderma, but I still keep in touch with my friends and colleagues that, I worked with, checking in with them, and just being there, right? And just being strong and authentic, because without authenticity, it is really, really, really hard, right? And so I know it's easier for me to say, but find that one person that you can work, just talk to, whether you're in the work environment or you're now at home because of the condition, right? Have somebody that you can just talk to, because I think that's very, very important as well.
Yeah.
And keep a strong mindset as well.
Yeah.
That's also very important.
Obviously, there's a lot that doctors don't know about scleroderma, but I'm sure you're talking to your own physicians, but maybe through your advocacy, you've been able to have conversations with physicians as well. But what is I don't know, there's 100 things that they should know about people with scleroderma, but what are the one or two main key things that you think doctors of any specialty that might touch scleroderma in any way, what are the top things that you think they should know or understand about the condition?
I would say, what does a scleroderma patient look like? That is because basically we have similar traits, and it all starts off in our hands. And so if we start seeing skin thickening, fatigue, joint pain, you don't want to automatically assume that it is scleroderma. So by doing a scleroderma autoantibody test, that is one guide, right? And unfortunately, there are different types of scleroderma autoantibodies, and based on the type of autoantibody, it also classifies the severity of the disease, also what are the components that are going to get affected. So I think if people are educated on that one component, I think then that will help the physician or the specialist treat you, right? Because like I said, scleroderma is a vascular disease, it's an inflammation disease, it's an immunity disease, and it's a scarring disease. And you know what? That affects all the ologists, right? From your nephrologist, pulmonologist, gastrologist, and also now, your eye doctor, your cardiologist. It's a truly multifaceted disease, right? And so me personally, if I better understood what that autoantibody test was showing, I don't know, hindsight wise, the severity, I might have known more or did more, but you can't say that, right? So all I would say is that's why emerging clinicians, making them aware of the disease and the sort of different facets of it. Just so that, if they're in Kentucky, somewhere in a rural town, and they end up going there and they see a patient, they can say, maybe. So at least they can sort of navigate and do sort of the level of analysis and diagnosis that they need to do.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right?
What are the silver linings for you, if any, having scleroderma?
It was a hard, rough journey, but I came through. So I think I see myself as a butterfly now.
Oh.
I'm strong. I believe, even though I have the condition, I'm healthier now and happier in a way, right?
Mm.
Um,
How
I
so?
don't care about all these little things that before this type A Falguni would do, right? Um, I'm very I do focus on me. I focus on me and making sure I'm well, but I spend time with my family, do the things that I'm fortunate I can do the things that I enjoy as well. Um, because every day's a new day as well. So that's another thing. And I don't want to be, morbid and think, who knows? But before, the prognosis was very different with somebody getting scleroderma 15, 20, 30 years ago. We're making strides. And so I want to see that North Star. So keep strong, keep energetic. And I love the new me. I
That's so
truly do. It's hard. It
wonderful
is
to
hard, but I
hear.
do. I truly do.
Oh, yeah. It's you talk about the new you and people kind of, I guess, listening in from the outside, hearing your story and all of your symptoms and everything you have to mention, and some might think, well, okay, it's a new you, but when we think, new year, like new year, new you, yay, all these great happy changes, and here you've been through so much, and you're still looking at it through this positive lens of things that no longer serve you, and you've been able to shed that in spite of your, or because of your condition. So when you say mindset, that's, I think, the epitome of
It
having
is very,
an
and I'm
amazing
saying, we
mindset.
have scleroderma, Laura, but I am not scleroderma. Scleroderma is a
Mm.
companion. That's what I'm saying. I have this companion
Okay.
with me now, right? So
Okay.
we have to learn to juggle and compromise and navigate and work with one another, right?
Oh,
So that we can come through.
such a positive spirit, Falguni, and I'm so grateful that our friend Maria Destor had
Yes.
introduced us, who's also involved in the scleroderma uh, world as well. And if anyone has questions or would like to connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
I'm happy to connect with them. I'm on Instagram, so they can reach out through there. Um, I'm also part of the Stephens Foundation board. So if they go to the Stephens Foundation, I'm there. They can reach out there. And if somebody reaches out to you directly, Laura, I'm happy for you to reach out to me.
Okay, that sounds good. And we'll make sure that your Instagram handle and the Stephens Foundation and any of the other
Yep, so
scleroderma
a research
organizations.
foundation. Yep.
Yep, we'll put that all in the show notes as a resource. But any final thoughts from you?
First, thank you for this opportunity.
My
And all
pleasure.
I would say is, if you're a scleroderma patient out there, I know it's hard. And if it wasn't hard, you wouldn't be where you are today, right? So the journey is hard. Sorry, I always get teared up, but it's
Mm.
God gives us things in different ways, and if we weren't strong enough, we wouldn't be standing where we are today. So have your faith, have your family, have your smile, and every day is a new day, right? So we're going to get through this, and we are going to have a cure very, very, very soon. So stay
Aw,
positive.
aw. Falguni, you are a beautiful spirit and a beautiful lady, and
Thank
I
you.
am so grateful for you to share your story with us and provide all of these resources and amazing advice for people who are newly diagnosed and just maybe having difficulty managing through all of it. But thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you for the opportunity. And all I would say is every story is unique, and I'm just one of many. And so we are all warriors out there, and let's just support one another, help one another. And the more we can talk about our condition, the easier and better it's going to be to get to that North Star of finding a cure.
100,
Thank you.
100%. Yeah, thank you. Well, I am always honored to help amplify those unheard voices out there, and there are so many. So thank you for helping us do that, Falguni. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Stay well and keep pushing for answers.
Oh my goodness, that's a wrap on another compelling story. Thanks for listening to the Desperate for a Diagnosis podcast. If you would like more information about today's guests or to find out more about Laura, go to desperateforadiagnosis.com. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow show updates and healthcare news on the podcast's Facebook page. If you would like to be a guest on the show, or if you have any questions, advice, or suggestions for our guests, please email me at lauramarie@desperateforadiagnosis.com. Please note, I am not a medical professional, nor am I affiliated with any healthcare, pharmaceutical, or device company. I am an entrepreneur and an independent market researcher focused on helping healthcare organizations better understand the patient perspective. The podcast is not meant to offer medical advice, but to merely share the stories and perspectives of podcast guests.